it's Alice, and I got some new books recently, and I would like to show them to you. The main reason for this particular book haul is that one of my favorite online shops that sell books had a sale on, and I thought, I'm gonna treat myself. And I did, and I maybe got a little bit carried away, but that's okay, because why wouldn't it be? It's books. We've got a little bit of everything today. We've got some fantasy, some historical fiction, even some romance, believe it or not, and we're just basically gonna get into it. I think we're gonna start with the fantasy books. First up here, I got 2 books by V.E. Schwab. I have read a couple of books by her like years and years ago when I was like a little more into fantasy, and then I had a few years where I didn't read a lot of fantasy, but now I'm sort of getting back into it. So I picked up 2 books by her that I have wanted to read for a while. The first one I got is Gallant, in which we follow, I think, a mute girl who is an orphan, and she's grown up at this home for orphans or some sort of like school that she's lived at, I guess, and she, when she's reaching the end of her time there, she gets a letter from an uncle that she didn't know about, and he invites her to come to his estate, and she decides to go, but when she gets there, she realizes that this letter is actually like years old, and the uncle is dead, and she's there, and she's just like in this house that is filled with servants who for some reason are still there. She gets to stay there though, but it is a little bit strange because the servants tell her that she can't go out after dark, and there's like a particular part of the estate that she has to stay away from, which sounds very intriguing. I love a good like mysterious estate, and I have read something about there being like another realm in this. I don't know what that means, but it sounds very, very interesting. I also really like this cover. And this is a book I have had on my TBR for years. And it also has some illustrations inside, which is very interesting. This looks slightly terrifying, so this is gonna be good, I think. It looks fantastic. The second one I got is A Darker Shade of Magic, and if you were on BookTube like 5 years ago, you will know that this was everywhere and so many people were talking about it, and I wanted to read it back then as well, but then I just wasn't in a fantasy mood, so I just never got it, but I still think it sounds great. I'm very late to the party, but that's okay. I'm often that with books. I like to read books like a couple of years after everyone else for some reason, and the story in here, like, it's set in a world where there are several Londons, so there are parallel Londons, and our main character can travel between them, which is a very rare ability. And I think officially he works for the government in some sort of way, and he's like an ambassador traveling between, but unofficially he is a smuggler, and that smuggler business gets him in trouble. I just think it sounds really cool, and I love the setting of London, and it's gonna be interesting to have like several of them. I wonder how they differ, and it sounds like a little bit of an adventure, and it sounds like the kind of fantasy that I like, and it is also the first in a trilogy, so if I like this, there is more to read, which is great. I think there's one of the Londons that is like gone, and I wonder what happened with that. Next, I got a book that I think is kind of like Dark Academia-esque. It's A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee, and this is about this girl who returns to her school after being away for a year, I think, and she left because her girlfriend died at the school, but she's back now and she's there to graduate, and it seems like this school is like up in the mountains somewhere, and there's a lot of weird history there, and there seems to be a history of witchcraft, which I think is like the fantasy element of this book. I don't know that much more about the story really. I got this mostly because this is a book that's often recommended alongside other books that I know I already like, and so I think I'm gonna like it based on that. I love a good academic setting, and it appears like the school is kind of like remote, which is cool, and I love anything to do with like witches and witchcraft, so I hope that's a big part of the story. I also love this cover. It looks kind of autumnal, and there is something about reading books set in schools in the fall that I think is great, so I might save it for that if I don't just read it right away, because I love a good story about witches. Then I picked up the next 2 books in the Scholomance series by Naomi Novik. So we have The Last Graduate and The Golden Enclaves. And the first book is A Deadly Education, which I read fairly recently. It was either earlier this year or late last year. I don't really remember. But I really like the first book and I want to know what's going to happen next. The first book is set at this school where there are no lessons and there are no teachers, and there's always like things trying to get into the school that want to kill the students, which sounds crazy because it is. The school is also built into a void. It's a whole thing, but I really liked the world in the first book, even if there were some things that didn't make sense to me. And I just would like to see the world expanded in these books. I think that could be really interesting. I also feel like the main character grew on me as I went through the first book, and I'm interested to see how she fares as she moves on, because she has a tendency to rub people the wrong way. And I also wonder if everyone in this series is gonna survive, because that school really is crazy. Moving on, we have got some cozy fantasy, which is a relatively new genre to me. I tried out a couple in a vlog recently and I loved it, so I just wanted to get some more. The first one I got is a sequel. It's The House Witch 2, which is not the most creative title, but that's okay. In the first book, we are introduced to this magical land and our main character, who is a cook, and he starts a position with the royal family as like the royal cook. And he is a witch, and he tries to hide that at first because in this world it's not always accepted, and basically we just follow him in this world and the people in the castle, and a bunch of stuff happens. The first book was really wholesome. There was all of this food and it was very heartwarming and sweet, but it did leave a lot of loose threads, and so I'm excited to get into this and see if I get some answers to some stuff, because it set up a lot of things and I'm very intrigued to see where it all goes. I'm pretty sure there's already a 3rd book out, and it's just a very sweet book. I love the characters and I love all of the magic, and it's just a nice little escape. The second one is one I'm sure you've come across if you've looked into cozy fantasy at all, because loads of people recommend this book and loads of you have recommended it to me, so I got it. It's The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna, and I am always up for anything with witches. Like, I just love witches in books, and I just want to read all of the witch books. We follow this witch in here who I think has to hide her magic to keep herself safe, and she's growing up, I think, in an environment where it's not allowed. I don't really know. And I think she ends up going to this place to teach 3 other witches how to control their magic, and she gets really entangled in their lives, and there are all of these other people there that she gets entangled with, and I think there's a little bit of romance, and I don't really know. I haven't looked into this that much because I've heard so many good things, and I just assume that I'm gonna get on with it. The next one that I got has the best title. It's A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by Kingfisher, and I love this angry little ginger man at the front here. I saw the cover of this book and I saw this little guy and I was like, I have to read that. This follows a young wizard who feels lesser than the others around her because she can't do things like summon lightning or anything cool like that. All of her magic has to do with bread, which I love. I would much rather be friends with someone who has bread magic than lightning magic, but maybe that's just me. She lives at, I think she lives with her aunt, and they have a bakery and she works there. And then I think they find a dead body in the bakery, and it appears like whoever killed this person is after our wizard, and that's a whole situation. I wonder if the bread is gonna save her. I hope so. I think that would be really fun. Then we have got a graphic novel which looks very sweet. It's Mooncakes, and this says it's a story of family, demons, witchcraft, and love, which sounds amazing. The story follows this teen witch who works in a bookshop, And in her free time, she like investigates supernatural occurrences in her New England town. And on one of these investigations, she runs into an old childhood crush who happens to be a werewolf, because why not? This sounds lovely, and I think the art looks really good. I really enjoy this kind of artwork, and I'm always looking for standalone graphic novels, so I'm pretty sure this is that. I really like these dark pages as well, and it just seems very sweet, and of course I want to read about a witch who works in a bookshop, because that's the dream. Next, we have got some historical fiction, but we're not leaving the fantasy realm quite yet, because I got these two books. These are in the same series, which I actually didn't realize when I got both of them, but they're in the same series, and I realized that maybe it's a mistake to get both of them before I've tried the first one, but I just thought both sounded like so much fun that I just got both, and I think I'm gonna like them, so I'm sure it's fine. Both of these books are by India Holton, so we have the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels and the League of Gentlewomen Witches. This is the first one, I'm pretty sure, and it follows a lady thief who has to save her aunt from a pirate, and she's a part of this crime society called the Wisteria Society, and it just sounds like super fun. Like, a book about a female thief sounds amazing. There is also something about an assassin in here, and it's set in like Victorian times, and it says something about how like the men show up and they ruin everything, which just sounds like fun. And I do think there is a little bit of romance in here, but I feel like the rest sounds fun enough for me to like deal with it. The second one is, I think, about a group or like a society of witches, and I'm pretty sure these books are set in the same world and they're like competing societies. I don't really know. Our main character in this one comes across this magical amulet, and she has to keep it out of the wrong hands, and a lot of people want it. And there's also something about a pirate in this one, and I don't know if it's the same pirate in both books, but I'm excited to find out. I just thought these books sounded like a lot of fun and just like pure entertainment. And sometimes I get into a rut with reading a lot of heavy books, and it's really nice to have these kinds of things when you just want a break and you just want to have fun. The last historical fiction, though, is just straight up fiction, so we're leaving the fantasy behind. This is Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead, and I've had this on my radar ever since it was on the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist, which it says here, and I just think it sounds amazing because it's, I think, a little bit of an adventure book, and you know I'm always looking for more adventure books. This tells the story of this daredevil aviator, and I think it starts off in Montana in 1914, and our main character is determined to become a pilot, and she drops out of school to like chase her dream, and her main goal is to circumnavigate the world by flying over both poles. There is also, I think, a contemporary perspective in this, which I'm not as interested in, but it is a little bit of a chunky book, and I think those kinds of like dual timelines can work really well with the books like these, so I'm very intrigued. I think there's going to be, or I hope there's going to be, a lot of adventure in this, and there is something really cool about reading about a female pilot in like historical times. Lastly, at the end here, we have two contemporary books. The first one you might be surprised to see on this channel, which, to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised too, but here we are. It's Beach Read by Emily Henry, and this is just straight up romance, which is why it's surprising to find on this channel, because I usually don't read these kinds of books, but I have an idea for a vlog that requires me reading this book, so that's why I got it, and that's why I'm gonna read it. I think it's gonna be fun though, and interesting, and I am looking forward to it, believe it or not. The story is about this romance writer who no longer believes in romance, and this literary writer who is stuck in a rut, and I think they end up spending a summer together somehow. I don't know if they're stuck together or what, but it's gonna be interesting to read. Stay tuned for that vlog, because I think it's gonna be fun. Lastly, we have got a book that I just finally had to get because I just need to like read it and get it out of my system. It's My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. I have picked up this book maybe 5 times in a bookstore and almost bought it, and then I've put it down because I don't know if I'm gonna like it or not. But I've done it so many times now that I just have to read it and find out. The story is about this woman who goes into like hibernation for a year, and I have no idea why she does that or how she does it. I think she's just unhappy and she wants a break somehow. And I just have to read this book to find out if I like it or not. I also want to try something from this author, and I think this is a good place to start, so this can go both ways, I feel. I'm either gonna love it or just absolutely hate it. That was the last book though, which means that we have reached the end. I would love to know if you've read any of these books and what you thought, or if you have picked up any exciting new books lately. I would love to hear about it. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!